And the Lord said, go out to the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, that my house might be filled. The call is for real ministry. So to my fellow ministers, where you at? My people dying out on the streets, killing each other senselessly. Prisons are filled with family. So many babies, so little food to eat. Another mother grieves today, 'cause a baby boy, he was killed by a gangster's stray. Calling all preachers, teachers, and real ministers, where you at? The hungry, the empty, compel them to come in. Hit the highways and hedges, out from the four walls, y'all. Where you at? The broken, the distraught, compel them to come in.
And how many shots were in your brother again?
He was shot 3 or 4 times in the head and 7+ times in the body.
Welcome to Let's Talk About It. What are you doing? I'm your host, Apostle Dr. Sulyans-Gibson-Chaplain. This is part 2 of the death and excessive force murder of Cole Stumps. Billings Police Department is the only one of the 119 law enforcement agencies that do not have nor want to have an outside investigation agency for excessive force. Police departments in Montana and elsewhere in the country frequently have outside agencies to conduct these investigations, in part to eliminate any conflict of interest. Montana has no such requirement in state law. Where is the moral compass to do what is right for all human beings in Billings, Montana? And this is all from the newspaper saying he was face down on the ground. Yep. I'm having a problem with that whole piece right there.
Yeah, from their own description of the scene, saying they had him face down on the ground with his arms pinned underneath him. Well, if you even just wrestled around with kids and you're on the ground and your arms are underneath you, it's hard to get up because you have no leverage. So how are you going to move enough to pull a gun out? And it was weird because when we went to go see the county attorney and the detective went so far as to play out the scene for us of what they said happened. And it was the county attorney tried to say that during all of this, which took place in under 30 seconds, the officer had enough time to go to his vehicle, to his unit, with the door shut, call in my brother's name, call in the license plate, and call in the VIN, and get a reply back. During that time, these other officers were on the ground with him, so he ran back, and I guess they said he was trying to pull my brother over. He was on his backside, he was laying on the ground, and he's trying to pull him over or something from what he said. And he said, my brother sat there and looked Officer Bickford in the eyes and said, I'm gonna effing kill you. And I just don't see that happening in a struggle, in a fight like that. Who's gonna stop and, sit there and take the time to look someone in the eyes and...
Absolutely.
Right?
There's a lot of questions that are not.
And I was like, do you guys plan on implementing a timeline on when you reply to emails? Because due to COVID, you guys aren't taking people in person, so you're telling everyone call in or email. What happens when you guys don't reply? Mm-hmm. Which is what they do a lot. They don't reply.
Wow.
And when I went on there, and it was they broadcast it on TV, mm-hmm. And the woman tells me, she knew who I was, I listened on every city council meeting. And she's like, well, can you email us your question? And we'll reply back. And I was like, she's like, you have our email? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And she's like, okay, well, we have your email too. For, just free things that they can change that can help. I even went so far as like researching inquests. Kings County in Washington reformed how their inquests were done. And they did it in 3 months, and they changed it to where they have a family advocate where the family gets to ask questions, or a representative of their family gets to ask questions. It's more defined to just the facts, and they can affidavit from them.
What did you need an affidavit for?
To file the report for when I was getting followed by the police.
Okay.
By the undercover police.
Okay.
And so, I felt threatened, so that's what they tell us to do, call the cops.
Right.
And calling the cops, I felt more threatened. Because they weren't worried about the people who were following me, which made me believe that they knew who it was. It's, I've been, where City Hall, or Town Hall, maybe? City Hall? It's just like right over here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the city administrator's secretary, I was filing a request to see the city administrator, and she said that she didn't have any of the paperwork and I'd also asked to find out where the funding for the body cams, because they got $120,000 in August for body cams.
Right.
I have Googled the most expensive body cams there is, $2,000 per officer. We have, 164 officers here?
Mm-hmm.
So, 2,120, like, they should have been able to cover it. At least half.
Mm-hmm.
With storage. And I think only 8 officers have body cams, or 8 officers at the time had body cams. So I was like, well, what happened to this $120,000 that got donated? So I go to request that, and the woman tells me, oh, well, you'll have to go get that paperwork across the hall. And so I go over there, and I fill it out, and I go to turn it back in. She's like, this isn't for us. This is where you turned it in. I'm like, well, where do I turn it in? Right back across the hallway at the woman who I had talked to. But by this time, she had left her desk. And so I kind of had to stand there and wait for another assistant to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I have went into any office here, be it like the police station, the self-help, the library, we weren't even allowed to look at the archives.
Why?
Due to COVID, because everyone's only allowed 30 minutes in the library.
Okay.
We walked in the library, went directly to the archives. There for 5 minutes. We signed in, and she's like, oh, well, we can't tell how long. And I'm like, well, there's a sign-in sheet downstairs. I can go get a copy of it and bring it up. We've been here less than 8 minutes. And she just refused to. Anytime I go to these other places, they automatically recognize my face. I don't live here. I've never been in trouble. So I'm like, how do they know who I am? But they immediately go get their supervisors. So I wrote a letter, which I never got an answer to the city administrator, stating that maybe his employees need more training. Because if they can't get me simple paperwork such as an affidavit, they obviously need more training. Which leads me to believe that if these people in these smaller positions need training, these people who are allowed to carry guns probably need a lot more. And so I wrote a letter, stating that I thought they needed more training, because anytime I went in there, I've had to talk to a supervisor, still wasn't able to get any simple paperwork. It was just stonewall after stonewall. I had to go different routes from different people going to get these papers so I could fill them out, or finding them on the internet. And going so far as having to take our tribal attorney and everything I write to them, taking an ACLU, Indian People's Action, people who pay attention to this stuff. People who could, see that this is wrong, like our tribal council, to even get any sense of a reply back. I'm his sister. I know, like, being a big sister, I feel like I should have protected him more. I know, like, I don't do the shoulda, coulda, wouldas in life, like, because that would just cause more heartbreak. But I wasn't able to do anything then, I guess. But I can do something now so someone else doesn't lose their brother. Or, you know, their son.
Yeah.
I'm hoping more people are going to be willing to stand up. So, and I don't think people realize that, like, the load is so heavy, but if people were be willing to stand up and be vocal and just do something, it lightens the load for everyone. And that's what I was, like, telling, you know, family members, you know, even people at home, like, well, you know, because, like, when they're asking something, I'm like, well, I can't, I'm busy, you know. And any free time I get, I want to spend with my kids.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you know what, well, like, when people ask me, well, you should do this, my answer has been, why don't you do that why don't you do that and then let me know?
Exactly. Good
Because,
for you. Good for you delegating it back. Amen.
Because if it's not an idea you know, like, I'm open to ideas, but if it's just not something I can get to, like, if you can look it up, let me know, I'm more than willing. But I barely have time for my kids. You know, I barely have time for myself with all this. Like, it's been 6 months since my brother passed away. And I've been completely dedicated to this. Like, even at times, you know, thank God for my brother helping with my kids, my older brother. And that's what I was telling people. I was like, if people were to even just stand up and help a little bit, it would help me so much more, because then I can be there with my family, you know. Instead of that extra half an hour of doing something, I could spend that with my family. And I get a lot of people are scared. A lot of people just want to believe my brother was in the wrong, you know, not thinking that he was a human life was taken by another person who's supposed to protect us. They would rather just make it like he deserved to die. Like they were the jury, judge, and executioner, and that's okay with them, and I'm not. I'm not okay with that at all. Like, they need to be held. They need accountability. They hide behind that qualified immunity as a reason to kill. All I have to say is, I feared for my life. Like, who do we call when the police are with murderers? Where do we go? Where do we turn? Because if they're the killers, you don't want to turn to someone who's working with them, because I was in the military. I get that brotherhood. I get that bond. You know, you back your brothers. Well, I'm backing my brother.
I know that's right.
You know, like,
yeah.
It's still so hard to wrap my head around that this has to be a fight to just even get the information.
Yeah.
To get the autopsy report, to get the incident report. When I went to go get the incident reports, Becky Shea was basically, oh, well, I think you should wait to work with the county attorney. I was like, well, I am. We have a meeting with them next week. I just want to get what I can to be prepared. That way I'm not asking unnecessary questions that maybe this incident report could give me. She was just like, no. I specifically had to ask her, are you saying no, I can't have this report? She's like, no. I was like, well, then I would like it. And she's like, well, and I was like, I get you're telling me I should work with the county attorney. I am. We have a meeting next week. But are you understanding I want to be prepared as much as I can, so I'm not wasting unnecessary time? Because we sat there, we met for like 3 hours. And then when we went to go schedule the next meeting, they were saying, oh, it's only limited to 1 hour. You can only have family members in attendance, because we asked Lita to come to find out. Lita is a family member. Me and Lita are related.
I'm very proud of you as a woman who's taken a stand, being a big mouth for the right cause.
Right? I'm like, now I finally have a reason to not shut up for something good.
I thank God for your love of your brother, and even in death, you're going to fight for him. Like you've always done as a big sister all his life?
And that's just like, he's my brother. Like, that's what family should do.
I thank you for not being intimidated by all the, what we call traps and snares that the enemy has established.
When I go in there, like, they already know who I am now. You know, I've only been in there 3 times. But yeah, every time I've went in there, the other workers don't even come to the front desk. They automatically go get their supervisor. And I'm like, okay, here we go again. I'm like, and it's hard. At times it's kind of hard to be cordial.
So the question I would ask you is, do they go get their supervisor because what you're about to ask them for, they're not authorized or permitted to let you have? Or help me understand, what's the purpose of going to get the supervisor? Are you aware of it?
I don't know. Okay. I'm thinking they were probably all told within office to, you know, in any office I went to, that if I approach, they talk to the supervisor, because any desk clerk in that office should be able to print me off an instant report.
Exactly.
Any,
it's public record, so
but it's, and it was, it was a fight. So she sits there and she tells me, you know, I had to specifically ask her that if I couldn't receive these documents, and she said, no, that's not what I'm saying. So I'm like, well, I would like them. And she tells me, well, they're going to be $200.
Oh!
As a matter of fact, I actually have to go see about my $20 back, because it came out to, she charged me $1 a page.
Okay.
And because I had requested the 5 instant reports before and after my brother's. And it came out to $20. Here, come to find out, they're supposed to be free.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, was there a sign in there that says you have to pay for her page?
No, we took a picture of the sign that said it was for free, but she still charged us.
Wow.
And she, within the 11 instant reports, she had left 3 of them out.
See, these are all the red flags. From the newspaper article I read, and I'm still trying to wrap around my head, how is a man on his belly, face down, 2 officers on him, is going to be able to turn around and shoot officers, where he winds up with 7 bullets in his body, 3 in his brain. You know, when you read these type of stories, and I just read it, that was really trying to insult my intelligence, and I'm a very intelligent older woman.
Yeah, it was like that in under 30 seconds. Like, it doesn't make sense. I would really like to get my hands on an original copy, printed copy of the Gazette that next day, the next 2 days. There is, whatever was printed in a newspaper is different from what they have online now. All the articles online at one point were gone from the Billings Gazette. They were gone. They're back up now, but they all link back to just one story. They might have the different little headings, but they all link back to the last story they wrote, which was, makes my brother just sound horrible.
Well, I want to welcome you all to Let's Talk About It. I've been sitting here talking with the sister of the late Cole Stumps. And for those of you that don't know, that would have been me until I read it in the news. He is a victim of excessive force. The newspaper says one thing, but I'm glad I have a person who knows the facts. A total of 7 bullets in his body, 3 in his brain, and 4 in his mask. Police department has different reports. The coroner is mass confusion. Basically, this whole thing is, I'm just in shock. I'm going to wind up having to really dissect this interview that I had of her, and because I have a lot of questions, just hearing her experience, as she's a victim. There's no doubt about it. She's a victim. Her brother was murdered, or as she say, execution style. Yeah, anytime you shoot somebody in the head, it is execution. You know, and I'm still trying to figure out, like I said, him forced down and able to do all this. The whole thing is a lot of confusion, and there's no truth out here. They're telling one story, and they're seeing another.
They're also saying there is no video and none of them were wearing their audio packs allegedly.
See, but yet you spend thousands of dollars to have all of this to eliminate this type of a situation where now the family and the community wants to know. I know that out of 119 forces in the state of Montana, only Billings does not have an investigative separate service. And I looked at a report, and it stated the reason why Billings doesn't do it, while the rest of the other armed forces do, is because it's not a law. The question is, what has happened to our moral compass? Yes, these are very stressful situations that police officers encountered, so special training is needed. I want to thank everybody for stopping in with Let's Talk About It. What are you doing? And the question is, in this community, what are we going to be doing about this excessive force? We need for the voters and the taxpayers to come out, come to the community board meetings, start sending your letters in, whether email or the snail mail. Start making your phone calls, because this doesn't make any sense. She was telling me how she's afraid of police. I'm not there yet because I came from New York. And I never will be there because I walk with Jesus. I'm here on assignment to do what God called me to do. I have no problem. I'm not intimidated. I'm a very outgoing person, but I do have a voice too. So my question to the community is, what are you doing about things that you see happening that should not be happening when we're supposed to be a community on one accord, working together for the community, being able to feel safe? Until next time, this is Apostle Dr. Lois Sulyans-Gibson of Let's Talk About It. What are you doing? I am thankful for the opportunity to have a family member talk about Cole Stumps, a human being who was killed due to excessive force. The question which keeps coming up in any excessive force case is, why is a police officer not made accountable? It's called qualified immunity. It's the language by which is designed to protect all but the plainly incompetent or those who knowingly violate the law. Law enforcement officers are entitled to qualified immunity when their actions do not violate a clearly established statutory or constitutional right. Qualified immunity is complex, but basically it prevents criminal lawsuits against law enforcement officers. Qualified immunity is a judicially created document. It needs to be outlawed at the state or federal level through legislation. In order for effective change of qualified immunity, voters, many in the church, must use not only their voice, but create reform. We are our brother's keepers. Let's get out and change the law.
Let's do this. Highway people dying out on the streets.
Join us for our next show on Let's Talk About It. What are you doing? We will be talking about domestic violence and for love shouldn't hurt. We'll be discussing on the power and control wheel, which is very informative. And if you find yourself in any of these situations, whether using emotional abuse, using isolation, using your children against you, using male privilege, using economic abuse, using coercion and threats, using intimidation, and minimizing, denying, and blame. We'll be talking about this. And did you know that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner? On a typical day, local domestic violence hotlines receive approximately 19,159 calls, approximately 13 calls every minute. Since COVID-19, there has been an increase in domestic violence. But where do you go? Where can you go? We will be discussing some of these issues and resources that are available during this pandemic, which was very limited. I'm reminded of a call I got this week alone of two, a man and a woman. Yes, men are victims of domestic violence too. Some are verbally abused and some are physically abused. But it's harder for men to seek help because everybody's on the assumption that a man can handle it. Abuse is abuse. There's also senior abuse and domestic violence. We will be talking about this and several more resources that I was able to find here in Billings, Montana. If you know of anyone that suffered domestic violence, even our children are victims of it. I too am a survivor of domestic violence as a child, then later on in life with the verbal abuse. So join us on Let's Talk About It. What are you doing? I'm Apostle Dr. Elois Sulyans-Gibson-Chaplain-D.D.